Hello, I'm Serena Convert, and I'm going to be showing you how to make felt. This technique is called wet felting. Uh, when you look up felting, you're often going to see two different terms, wet felting and needle felting. Needle felting is a more modern construct that is done with barbed needles, and with wet felting, this is an ancient art that you don't use any needles with this. There's a lot of legends that go on about how felt was originally made, and one of them is that two monks on a long journey stuffed wool into their shoes, and by the time they got to their destination, it had felted because of the sweat from their feet and the friction. And that's pretty much what you need to make felt, is you need some sort of fiber that will be able to be felted, such as sheep wool, and you need something to create friction, and moisture will help speed on that process of making the felt. So here are some examples of things that I've done and showing how some different wools and different techniques can work. So this is made using Cheviot, which I really like that for a felter. It felts together pretty fast and holds up pretty well. This makes a pretty sturdy piece. This is merino. If you are sensitive to wool, you may want to try this. A lot of people that are allergic to wool can handle merino. It is an Australian variety though, and it's very soft. This does felt well, but it takes a lot more to get a thick, sturdy piece of felt on there. And see, this is kind of thin and is actually technically in what's called a half felt or pre-felt state, because it could still be felted farther to get to the hard felt stage, which is what this is, where it's really smooth and tough on there, or about as smooth as felt is. This is kind of an in-between, is showing this is also Cheviot, but it's not fully to the hard felt state. You can kind of see the texture difference in there on that. Some good examples to look at for period felt is to look at the Asian cultures around the areas of the steppes in Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, in those areas. There's still a lot of felt that's being made today that's used for yurts and rugs and along the nomadic cultures. But there are some period examples that are available that you can look up on that. There are different things that you can use to make felt. I'm showing some of the modern with this. You need something down as a base layer and to lay the felt out on. That can be a piece of muslin, it can be a bamboo mat like a sushi rolling mat. Bubble wrap works really well, and nylon netting is another option. I like to use a base of bubble wrap to start off with. You can do it directly on the mat. However, if you're using some fine wools, a lot of times the wool will get stuck into the mat. So I would recommend, if you're not wanting to use bubble wrap, to use a piece of muslin or 100% cotton fabric to lay down. Do not use anything that has colors in it, because you're going to be working with hot water and that could bleed onto your work. And so what I'm going to lay out right now is I'm just using this merino just as an example, because it's easier to see than the white Cheviot is. Now this is cut, but you don't generally want it to be cut. Usually you're going to find things coming in big rolls. You may have roving or rollouts or top, depending on things. You may just have just tufts of wool. Mostly what you want to do is you want to take your wool and just pull it, because if you cut it, that actually makes the fibers too even. You want to have things a little bit uneven, because it's with the wool, there's little tiny barbs on it, and that's what's going to join together to make your fabric. So we lay it down in alternating layers. So show the first layer here. So I tear off a little bit. I'm just spreading out a little bit of my clump, and I'm going to overlap it a little bit over that first piece. do that across. And so you have your layer that forms. That's where I don't have enough of that color, but we're just going to make this a little bit colorful here right now. So you have your first row. So then the next row is going to go the opposite direction. So I had it going this way, so now I'm going to leave it going this way. And so you pretty much do that on alternating layers until you have it how thick you want it. I would recommend at least 3 layers. If you're using a really thin wool like this, then you're probably going to want at least 5. Generally, you would only do 3 if you were doing something really thick. Like if I were to take off this whole chunk like this and lay out this thick of a piece next to each other, then I could get by with 3. On merino, you're almost always going to want at least 5. The only thing you would want thinner would be is if you plan on using the piece to be a half felt piece like this that you can cut out shapes and lay into another piece of felt. More on that later. So I'm going to show you a piece that I already have set up to be able to get to the felting process. So I have this laid out on a piece of bubble wrap on top of my bamboo mat here. Now with soap, you can use liquid soap. There are different preferences out there of what people prefer. Bar soap though works just fine. You can shave it. I have a vegetable peeler that is just for that purpose. Sometimes it just depends on what type of project I'm doing, that I may mix the soap directly into the hot water and then pour that on. But there is another way to do that, and that's to apply the soap directly to the piece. So I'm going to use my piece of netting on top. So you want to wet this. There are different things that you can use. I'm hoping this kept my water hot enough here. Sometimes I use condiment bottles, or I use just a little plastic to-go cup. This one's more insulated. So you want to just have a little bit of water on to begin with. So this one's pouring a little bit more than normally would on things, but I'm going to go with that. If you are sensitive to the hot water, you may want to use gloves. And so as I'm patting this down, I just want to make sure that everything has some water on it. So you don't need to completely pour over. You just want to make sure that everything is at least a little bit saturated here. And then if you're using a bar of soap and nylon netting, this is why I like to do the netting on top, so that you can just guide it right over the material and get your soap in there. And then you can use your hand to move in circles. Now you can keep just doing it that way, but it will take quite a while. Some things you can do to speed that up. So I have a flat back measuring cup, and that allows me to get more pressure and to move around. Still want to move in circles to try to keep everything in place. Another option that sometimes used would be a rolling pin. So how long this would take depends on what type of wool you're using, how thick of a piece you have, what you're using for your backing and things like that. It's going to take some practice to look at it. So periodically, you can peel back the layer a little bit And you can peel this up a little bit, and you see that it's already fabric. Now, this actually went beyond my piece of bubble wrap, and it's doing okay against the bamboo mat on its own, so that's good. I'm just going to go a little bit farther on that. So I probably have a little too much soap on here, but that's okay. I can make that work. So now I have this a bit of a sudsy mess here, but we'll work that out. So that's the first step, is this is technically your pre-felt or half felt at this point. Because yes, it's together for the most part, and it's a piece of felt, and I can pick that up, but it's still really soft. So we want to get to the hard felt state, or to pull it. And for that, we're going to need to do some rolling. So I'm going to put a little bit more water in here just because I have a lot of soap. And I want to try to get some of that out here in a moment. It is very sudsy. So for rolling it, this is where the mats are good. So this is just a little bamboo sushi mat. If you're doing a larger piece, you can get a straw beach mat or blinds. You can get bamboo blinds that work really well. So you don't want to squeeze all the water out because you do still need to have some. But you do want to squeeze some of this out, because I have a lot of soap on here. And sometimes if it's really soapy, you may need to rinse it a little bit on there. So for our rolling, and I'm just using a lid here, a shallow tray is good. If you have a separate space to be able to change in between the step, that would work well too. You can do the rolling on a floor. Some people find that easier. You can roll with your feet, especially if you're using a big piece. Now I roll this up directly, but another way that I will often do this, unroll this, is to take the rolling pin and you can roll it up around that. And so if you have some issues, which I sometimes do with my wrist, this will make it easier. You can tie this on and then use the rolling pin to just roll it back and forth. You can use a piece of fun noodle or PVC pipe or something round and hard like a dowel rod that you can roll up. That is easier for a lot of people, and especially if you're wanting to put it down on your feet. You can also just roll it directly like this too. It doesn't have to necessarily be tied up. I'm just using the towel to help soak things up. If you're going to roll on a floor or something, I do recommend wrapping it completely in the towel and felting it in the towel. But that does get a little bit complicated because you do have to periodically take it out or open everything up and change direction on things. Because it's felting in one direction, and I'm actually going to take the bubble wrap off. We're going to do it just straight on the mat, but I had it going this way, now I have it going that way. Sometimes to get a good roll, put it in your hands, but I know that can be hard sometimes, and sometimes I have issues with that, which is where the rolling pin can be a helper for that. Now, if you wanted to make a big piece like a rug, I would recommend doing that as a group project. If you look at some of the videos that are out there available, looking at some of the nomadic cultures, and they're making the walls for their yurts and their rugs, it is pretty much about a village project. And there's a lot of people that are working at once to lay out the wool and to felt this. Now, some period methods that are actually still used for making large pieces, some of the nomadic cultures, is pulling it behind a horse. But most of us don't have access to a horse. But children really do like helping with this project. And this is something that children can easily do. You can see that this is starting to get smaller. That's part of the pulling process, is that it shrinks it and hardens it. Now, sometimes you may have to add more hot water, but it's just that process of the friction and the moisture that is helping to make this form into your felted fabric. So there's a piece of felt. So this would need to be gently rinsed out a little bit and then left to dry. Sometimes I will do that and then take a look at it and decide if I need to felt it farther, and just start the process again of just having the hot water and soap and rolling it and seeing how far you need to go on it. Now, some other simple things that you can do is you can lay color pieces on in different patterns on the top of your piece. Sometimes what people will do is they'll lay it out on the mat. They'll lay the design out and then put the solid color on top. Another way is to make a piece of felt in one color and a piece in another color, and you cut out a design on one and the mirror image on the other, and then put those in together. And you can either sew that down, or if it's half felt, you can actually felt that together. But this is just the basics of how to make felt. If you have any questions, my email will be available for those for this class, and just reach out if you have any questions. And thank you, and have a good day.